Hey, this is Dave with Taboo Customs. This video today we're going to be talking about some tools. And we're going to be talking specifically about a tool that we purchased earlier this year while we were walking around a show, and we saw them doing a demonstration. We said, hey, that's kind of interesting. We stopped, watched the demonstration, ended up purchasing one of those tools, partially because we had a fairly specific use for that tool, but it was also something that is just another tool we can add to our toolbox for while we're doing fabrication. Whenever we run into those odd places where a hard wheel or something will not fit in a spot, this is something in the right gauge would work out pretty well. So the tool we're talking about is the Bad Dog sheet metal cutter, the biter. And this tool here is listed as being able to cut 1/8 inch aluminum, 14 gauge mild steel, 16 gauge stainless, 11 gauge copper. So for doing body work and things, or cutting in different taillights or something, for instance, into a tub, this would also work. Now, our instance that we are going to show you here is actually going to be in the house that we're working on building, where we're working on some HVAC ducting. We're going to be cutting some holes in that. We'll also be cutting some holes in some sheet metal in our ceiling as well. So let's go ahead and take a look inside. Now inside you've got the actual tool. Now we did buy the double-headed one. You can get one that just has this 2-inch head. We went ahead and got one that had the 2-inch and the 4-inch head, and I think this was about $200 or so at the show. You've got a handle, a wrench, an extra cutting bar that runs down through there, and an extra cutting head. So these heads and these bars do wear out. Now we have cut many holes with this one. We're still using it, so far it's been going well for us. Now we are going to be cutting a lot of round holes as well, and this is another thing that's pretty good. So we actually bought what they call the Bad Dog leash, and it's just a something that we can use to drill a hole and cut a pretty well concentric large. For us, we have to cut up, and it looks like you could probably cut about 11-inch hole with this. We're cutting a 10-inch hole, so right there is actually where we're at. So we're going to be taking a look at that. We'll walk through how well it works, and we'll show you some applications that we're going to use it with. So what we're going to do first is we're just going to cut a hole, and this is a 10-inch hole and a piece of ductwork here. And one of the claims from Bad Dog is over other tools like this is that one of their biggest things is this is a steerable head. So you can actually go in here and steer and do all kinds of crazy S shapes, but the thing is, yes, that's nice, but you usually, like in the demonstration, they're going all over and it's nice, but who's actually cutting like that? Usually you're cutting either a square or a circle or something. But for this application, it does work great, and for an application we're just trying to make some clearance, it would work great as well. Now for what we're going to do, we actually have to swap this head out for this one here. So they supply a tool that just loosens up the set screw there, and then you can pull out the head. Go ahead and tighten this one down so it's not spinning. And this is a case where we're right up next to this flange on this duct, so we'll show you where this being able to rotate, which sometimes would want it to not rotate. It makes it a little bit easier, but in this case it's a time where it does need to rotate, because we're going to need the clearance to be able to get around that. But before we can start cutting, what we need to do is we need to drill a clearance hole for the head out here on the edge. All right, now say this will work with pretty much any corded drill, any cordless drill. We are using a 20-volt DeWalt drill. Been working pretty well for us. We'll set it up like that, put it in the hole. Now if it doesn't actually fit in both holes, we can actually come out here and use the cutter itself make a little clearance. Until we can actually fit the centering pin in the hole. Then with it clamped down, because this wants to move, there you go. Pretty clean hole. A couple of things. As we're using this, I don't know if you noticed, but this piece was not in line with this. So the drill could be in any orientation, but this is still basically, going to cut in a circle with our centering pin here. So it didn't really matter where our drill was, which was really nice, especially like you said, if you have to go around something like that. Now, also, you notice the one issue that we have ran into is that as you get towards the end of your circle, it wants to fall down and it'll fall out of the centering pin. So we just used a piece to support this side, and goes pretty well. I think we've cut about a dozen holes, over a dozen holes with this now. Still cutting really nicely, still cutting cleanly. So now in the end here, there is a little bit of a cleanup with a burr, but with that, you can just take and clean it up. One thing we have found, because we have tried cutting some straight edges and some squares, is that trying to cut straight with it isn't very easy. If you put something on here and clamped it down and put the head up against it and cut straight, it would work out well. But if not, it's kind of hard to keep it straight with, just trying to hold it by hand. So that is one drawback that we did trying to cut straight, where we still used a hard wheel to cut those areas out. But cutting in the corners definitely works pretty well. So let's take a look at our second application, where we'll still be cutting a circle, but we'll be cutting a circle in corrugated material, which is much more difficult and is a situation where we can't really use this effectively. Okay, so for the second application that we're going to show you here in this video is cutting our tin ceiling. You can see where we've got to cut our holes to run some ducts up through the ceiling. Obviously, it's corrugated, which makes it pretty difficult to cut. Not only a decent hole, but to cut a good-looking hole, something that's not ugly. Anyway, we've already gone and removed the leash portion that we had there to cut the holes earlier, because we can't drill a hole in the center and cut straight through these, because with the corrugations, we're going to have to go a bunch of different angles. So, see how it works. So before we talk about our conclusion and sum this up, we did want to pull out a piece of 14 gauge from the shop and kind of test this, because I mean we are cutting at 25 gauge ductwork right now, so we want to make sure this will cut exactly what they said it will cut. And so this is a piece of 14 gauge out of the shop, just mild steel. All right, so let's talk about what we think of the Bad Dogs Tools sheet metal cutter. Now, overall, we did like this. We do think it was worth our money to purchase this cutter, mainly because we do have to cut a ton of those large holes. You know, I've still probably got a dozen more of those holes to cut. We've cut over a dozen holes. We've cut now the 14 gauge sheet metal, and you know, another pro is it does still seem to be pretty sharp. In addition to still having an additional cutting rod in the box, you know, so far it still seems to be pretty good. It did cut through the 14 gauge okay. You did see me fight it there, especially on this longer end. Part of that I blame on actually had this longer end to where it would swivel back and forth. This end here, which was tightened down and fixed, I could actually use the drill to kind of force it through. So that's one thing that I noticed, that even though, you know, they tout being able to swivel that, it is a little bit of a pain. It does definitely help if you got a place where you can't get the drill into, but in general, if I don't need to swivel it, I'll tend to just leave it locked in and then use the drill to kind of force it through, because to try to use this is a little bit difficult. As far as some of the cons we did run into it, you know, obviously it is a little bit of a pricey tool, but I think, you know, if you've got to cut like we are some large holes, or you've got something special, you know, it's definitely one of those things that every now and then, you know, as a fabricator, we'll run into something there where we're trying to figure out how in the heck do we get in there to do this. This will be one of those tools that we might be able to go to for this. But as far as use in our shop, a lot we probably won't have a whole lot of use out of what we're doing right now of all this duct work. The only other con that I ran into was also that I didn't have any instructions in the box. So to get this to swivel, wasn't exactly sure what we needed to do. Tried loosening up this piece here on the end, but it's threaded into this rod, so it just, you know, thread out, which I didn't want to change the dimension in and out, because it'll change where, you know, the head out here is shearing, and I didn't want to have issues with that. So we did, you know, loosen up these set screws, which worked okay for this longer one. But on this shorter one, we've actually now started to have the set screw back out while we're trying to cut. So we'll actually have to stop in the middle, screw that back down, and then keep going. So I don't know exactly if that's how that was supposed to work or not. But in general, we have been happy with it. You know, and definitely if you have an application that you think you would use this, definitely would recommend purchasing this. And we will put a link in the description of this video, so that if you do and you are interested in purchasing this, you can go there, purchase one of these, and try it out for yourself. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, you can ask us here on YouTube or Rumble. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. And as always, a like or subscribe is greatly appreciated.